Hello, everybody. Craig DeLuz here. I know you guys are wondering what happened to coffee this morning. Well, we've been kind of working like some busy bees up here because we have some breaking news. As you know, President Trump and the ATF have, they are working to not necessarily do their jobs, to try and do the job of the legislature, and in an attempt to subvert the legislative process in order to ban bump stocks. And so we filed some comments with the ATF regarding their attempt to go beyond what their job description is. But we wanted to bring on board with you one of the attorneys that we're working with that's sort of to make this happen, to kind of explain to you what the importance of this whole process is and why this really matters and exactly what we did. So with that, I'd like to invite Mr. Adam Kraut. Adam, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Craig. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic, So I've been getting a lot of questions from people asking, so you filed these comments. What exactly does that mean, and what exactly is going on with this whole process? Can you help our folks understand that?
Yeah, sure. So I'll try and give you the 30,000-foot overview of the regulatory process. So whenever a agency either wants to implement a new regulation or change an existing one, they have to most of the time go through what's called rulemaking, and that requires them to give notice to the general public and allow the public to submit comments and participate in that process, either shaping the rule or addressing why they may not be legally able to do what they wish to do in that regulation. There's a lot of misinformation out there as far as people submitting comments that it's a sheer volume thing. It's not a popularity contest. It's the substantive information in the comments is what really drives this process. So if 1,000 people all say ban bump stocks and 1,200 people all say don't ban bump stocks, but none of them address any of the underlying issues, none of that really has any weight in it as far as the agency taking one position or the other. Now, if you start looking at the legality of certain things, such as addressing the agency's authority to undertake such rulemaking, or addressing the fact that it doesn't meet the definition in the law itself that Congress defined, things like that are what the agency is going to look to in moving forward with, or not moving forward with, any kind of rule, if you will.
Okay, so that's pretty good. Now, so the question then becomes, and I'll just be real with you, I don't own a bump stock, and quite honestly, I don't know a lot of people who do own bump stocks. But yet and still, this is an important thing that's taking place. Can you help our viewers kind of understand why is this so important? Why is it important that we take a stand here on this particular issue?
Sure. Well, as I think a number of your viewers and members of FPC probably know, everything is a slippery slope kind of deal. So where you lose ground on one thing, it just continues to fall out from underneath you, and before you know it, you're at the bottom of the hill with nothing left to stand on. I personally don't own a bump stock. I don't have an interest in owning a bump stock. But that said, there are a number of issues that were raised not only in our comment, but just generally looking at it, that are problematic. The biggest thing being ATF is exceeding its authority and attempting to redefine something that Congress already very clearly defined what is and what is not a machine gun. And that's really where I have a big problem with it. In addition to some of the other stuff, that's probably the biggest thing, is an agency's attempt to usurp its power delegated to it.
Well, exactly, because if they can rename one type of firearm or one type of firearm part, if they can redefine it, if the executive decides that they can redefine it, well, then they can do that with any firearm part or anything. So things that are currently legal could become illegal if we allow the ATF or under the direction of the president to basically exercise power that is not theirs but actually belongs to Congress.
Correct. And Congress has delegated authority to agencies to do certain things, which is why we have regulations and things like that. However, that power is not unlimited, and where Congress has clearly defined things in the law, the agency doesn't just get to willy-nilly change it at its discretion or the executive branch's push to do so. That would require Congress to step in and say, okay, we're changing what we meant or what we used to say that something was.
Now, I noticed that we're starting to see that in different states. I know that one state actually, I forget which state it was, but they actually just redefined what an assault weapon was, and a whole bunch of firearms that were assault weapons either were not considered assault weapons or considered illegal were all of a sudden banned because of a change in interpretation by the Attorney General. We've seen it happen here in California where the Attorney General just decides willy-nilly how, whether it's changing their interpretation of the law or actually writing rules or regulations without going through the appropriate process or going beyond. I mean, is this, at least I think I see it as a trend amongst attorneys general, both at whether at the federal level or at the state level. Is this something that you're seeing as well?
Yeah, it's something that I've noticed. I think the first state you were referring to was Massachusetts. I think Maura Healey up there, when she decided that all clones of things that were specifically enumerated on that list would now, or things that functioned in a similar fashion, would now fall under that, and all of a sudden this list just got 5 times the size it used to be. I think that's what we're starting to see as far as methods in which individuals who harbor anti-gun feelings or are not pro Second Amendment are attempting to find ways around what the legislatures have said is the deal in their state. Now, obviously, we also see legislatures like New Jersey, for instance, just passed a whole slew of things. So we do see the government bodies that are elected by the people also taking action, but we are seeing a number of instances where individuals that are part of what would be considered the executive branch at the state level are doing exactly what we're seeing here.
Well, in addition to that, and once again, something else that we're seeing in California is oftentimes the legislative branch lacks the technical knowledge, or in some cases, just the ability to be able to write the law to do what it is that they say they want to do. And so they either leave it incredibly vague or they write the legislation so incredibly bad and then count on the Attorney General through regulations to make it work. And in some cases, and we've seen this here in California, they wind up in the regulations writing completely new law.
Right. And, as far as the states, every state operates a little differently in that regard. So I can't necessarily comment on all 50 states in that. If you look at it from the federal perspective, that's the whole idea behind regulatory agencies, is that they possess specific specialized knowledge in the area that they're supposed to regulate. And Congress will often, say, here's the general field. This is what you need to kind of work within. Now go and do that. Now, when agencies start restricting things that Congress didn't necessarily intend for them to do, that's a problem. We see, particularly with ATF, unlike the majority of federal agencies out there, ATF is usually called kind of the redheaded stepchild. So where other agencies will work with groups that they're supposed to be regulating to come up with things that everybody can not only kind of live with, but is for the purpose of what the law is, ATF doesn't really do that with our industries, in the firearms industry. So it's not a symbiotic relationship, and not that they all necessarily are in other industries, but here we certainly see one where it tends to, at least on its face, appear to be more combative. And going to your point here, it's if Congress has defined something, Congress has said what it is. There's case law out there that very clearly says if Congress has said what it means, it's what it means. You don't get to just make it up as you go.
You have absolutely no idea how many times I have uttered those very same words. So now the comments are filed. What's the next step?
So the comment period actually ends later today. Electronic comments can be submitted until midnight Eastern Standard Time here. So if you haven't done that, or anybody listening hasn't done that and they're interested in doing it, regulations.gov is where you want to go. It is a trending topic last I looked, so it'll be right there on the front page for you to click. After that, ATF needs to review the submissions that were given. So in simplest forms, what they do is they look at the comments to see the issues that were raised. So if, going back to the earlier example, if 1,000 people said don't ban bump stocks, well, that all gets lumped in as one issue, and that one probably isn't even necessarily going to be addressed because it doesn't point to any kind of specific basis. But it's not the sheer volume, it's the number of issues that are raised. And if you look at the advance notice of proposed rulemaking and some of the comments that were filed there, and then you look at the notice of proposed rulemaking, which is what we're currently dealing with, you'll see in there that ATF said, okay, well, people said X, Y, or Z about this in the advance notice. This is why we either agree or disagree, or why it doesn't matter. If you go look at the docket for ATF 41F, when they changed with legal entities and NFA firearms, so irresponsible persons, fingerprints, photographs for everybody, all that stuff, you can see in that final rule where they say these issues were raised, this is our response to those particular issues. So they're going to have to do that with this. Then they'll do one of two things. They will either decide that they're not going to move forward with any kind of final rule, at which point this dies and we all go on with life, or they do what they did with 41F, where they implement the final rule, they publish it in the Federal Register, they have all those things in there as to this is the issue that was raised, this is why the agency either agrees, disagrees, or it doesn't matter for our purposes. And at that point, it becomes a game of does it get litigated or not? Where does it get litigated, issues that are raised, things like that.
So how political are these decisions? And I realize it's probably different from state to state, but at least in terms of the ATF, how political do these decisions wind up being, and how much is it actually based on the law and the technology that's being discussed?
That's a good question. I don't know if I could give you any kind of percentage as to how political it is. I mean, certainly this initiative to enter into the rulemaking was certainly a political push. I mean, you saw it very clearly with President Trump saying, I'm directing, Jeff Sessions and DOJ to ban these things. So that was very clearly political. As far as the implementation of it, there's a number of problems, especially if the legal footing for it isn't very strong. I guess it's like I tell clients with the police. The police can kind of do whatever they want. They may not legally be allowed to do whatever it is they did. And your remedy is going to the courts and saying, hey, look, they've exceeded their authority in X, Y, or Z. And at that point, that's where they get smacked back. So I don't know. I can't tell you how much of it would be political as far as, yes, we're actually going to implement this versus they believe they have a strong legal basis to do so.
Okay. Well, hey, I want to thank you so very much. People are going to be keeping an eye out. Obviously, we're going to be keeping an eye out for what's going on. For those of you, firearmspolicy.org is the place to go. For those of you out there watching, you can also follow it on our Reg Watch, which is also available. Follow us on Facebook or YouTube. Adam, I want to thank you for taking the time to come and sit and talk with us. As these things progress, we'd love to have you back on to talk with folks and let them know, what's going on and where we're at with this.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to be back.
All right. Hey, everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Look, and I realize whether the fight is, some of these fights can be very intricate. Some of them can be very broad and plain and easy to see. But every single one of them is an important fight that we're engaged in. So please support us as we support your right to keep and bear arms. Because as we always say, this is a fight for our civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. You guys take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.